The BBC accuses Downing Street of intimidation and a vendetta against one of its journalists. Alistair Campbell hits back, saying the BBC has lied in its reports about the threat posed by Iraq. Tonight, the row escalates over the BBC's reports on the government's intelligence dossiers. Also in the programme, one of Britain's biggest rail operators is stripped of its licence. In custody in Saudi Arabia, a man believed to be a key leader of Al-Qaeda. And Glastonbury, 25 years on, have the hippies been forced out?
On BBC London News, the Met is cleared of not taking enough care of its officers. And with no certainty about playing at Selhurst Park, where can Wimbledon play next season?
Good evening. The increasingly bitter row between the government and the BBC escalated tonight as the BBC accused Downing Street of trying to intimidate it over its reporting of the war in Iraq. The government's head of communications, Alistair Campbell, quickly retaliated, saying the BBC had broadcast outrageous lies. The rift centres on BBC reports in May, quoting an intelligence source who claimed that Downing Street had exaggerated the threat from Iraq. The government denies it. The BBC says it's standing by its journalism. Here's our special correspondent, Gavin Hewitt.
Make no mistake, this is a major row between the government and the BBC. Just listen to the language. The government accuses the BBC of telling lies, of making wholly false allegations. The BBC, in its turn, accuses the government of intimidation. It accuses Alistair Campbell of conducting a personal vendetta against one of its journalists.
Alistair Campbell is the government's Director of Communications. He was incensed by a BBC story last month that accused the government of sexing up one of its dossiers on Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. The story alleged that Number 10 had added the line that Saddam only needed 45 minutes to launch its devastating weapons. Alistair Campbell went on the attack.
I tell you, until the BBC acknowledge that is a lie, I will keep banging on. That correspondence file will get thicker, and they better issue an apology pretty quick.
Far from issuing an apology today, the BBC's Director of News, Richard Sambrook, turned on the government. He accused Number 10 of trying to intimidate the BBC in its reporting of events leading up to the war and during the course of the war itself. Alistair Campbell had demanded, does the BBC stand by the allegation that the government ordered the dossier to be sexed up? The BBC said today, we stand by our reporting of the source as saying that the dossier was sexed up. Campbell again. Does the BBC stand by the allegation that Number 10 added the claim that Saddam could launch weapons of mass destruction in 45 minutes? The BBC. The allegation was not made by the BBC, but by our source, and the BBC stands by the reporting of it. The BBC went on to accuse Alistair Campbell of conducting a personal vendetta against a particular journalist whose reports on a number of occasions have caused you discomfort. This row only intensified tonight with Alistair Campbell appearing live on television.
I do believe that anybody with an interest in good, decent journalism, of which there is a huge amount in this country, should understand that when allegations are made, when lies are broadcast, when, as that letter shows, there is not a shred of evidence to substantiate the allegation, they should apologise, and then we can move on.
The Foreign Secretary Jack Straw was before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee today. He too denied the BBC report.
None of those claims is true. They are all simple and straightforward falsehoods.
In Alistair Campbell's response tonight, you can feel his rage. He accuses the BBC of issuing pages of weasel words, of defending the indefensible. If the BBC bases its journalism, he says, on what any source says, then its standards are debased beyond belief. There have in the past been many rows between the BBC and government, but none quite like this. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News.
We can talk now to our political editor, Andrew Marr. Andrew, the bitterness of this row now between Downing Street and the BBC, it's unprecedented.
Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, we saw a little bit of that interview just now on Channel 4 News. The whole tenor of it was, well, I've never seen anything like it, jaw-dropping. If I treated this table the way Alistair Campbell treated the table in front of him, it would be in pieces. I mean, it was table-banging, very, very angry, very, very passionate. And I think what we're seeing is somebody who has been at the centre of government for 6 years, constantly attacked as the spin doctor-in-chief, the master of new Labour lies and so on, and he's had enough. He has exploded. He has crossed some kind of personal line, and it is about this particular issue where he is absolutely convinced that the BBC has lied. And the BBC, in response, has given a statement. Again, I don't think we've seen a statement by the BBC like this ever before to government. The BBC is not simply saying we stand by our story. The BBC is saying that all the way through the run-up to this war, which has split Britain down the middle, the government has been trying to intimidate BBC journalists. It is an absolutely extraordinary, unprecedented confrontation.
So, Andrew, what happens now? Where do we all go from here?
Well, very good question. Everybody has a great deal to lose in all of this. That's the first thing. I think the initial judgments are going to be made by these two select committees, the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and the Intelligence Select Committee, which meets in private. Now, if those committees decide that Alastair Campbell has indeed misused intelligence, or intelligence has been misused in the process in number 10, Alastair Campbell, and I'm sure he knows this and would acknowledge this, will have to resign in pretty humiliating circumstances. On the other hand, if these committees decide that there is no evidence whatever for what the BBC has been broadcasting, then it will be very hard for the BBC not to apologise, not simply from the Today programme, but across a range of outlets, and that in turn would be a major humiliation for BBC News. It is perfectly possible, in addition, that Alastair Campbell will, as Richard Sambrook of the BBC has invited him to do, take this to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. But this is now so big that neither side can afford to lose.
Andrew Marr, thanks very much. One of Britain's biggest rail operators is being stripped of its licence to run trains. The Strategic Rail Authority says Connex South Eastern is losing its franchise because of poor performance and financial mismanagement. The company's contract will be terminated by the end of the year.
Excuse me, sir, can I give you one of those? Changes on the Connex franchise, thank you.
Changes that have come as a big shock to the train company. Connex covers Kent, Sussex and South East London. Now it's being booted out and some commuters aren't sorry to say goodbye.
Well, they deserve it, I think, because they're a pretty chronic service, so let somebody else have a go, I think, you know. That's the best solution, I reckon.
You get the train cancelled and it's a nightmare. And you pack on the train and you hardly got any leg to stand on.
Thank you very much.
A shock for staff as well. They won't lose their jobs, but they will have to move to an interim government company and then to a new franchise operator next year.
Connex South East is one of the busiest train operators in Britain, but now it's become the first to be sacked for not delivering performance to the passengers or managing the money from the taxpayers.
Because like most operators, Connex relies heavily on subsidy. It runs up to 1,800 services a day and carries around 500,000 passengers. The total subsidy Connex was originally due to get, until the end of 2003, was £472 million. But this year it had to be bailed out with an extra 58 million, and then Connex said it wanted another 200 million for the next 3 years. That's when government rail bosses decided Connex was out of control.
Primarily it was around their ability to be on top of the financial management of the company that they were running. But this was, it was obviously a difficult decision, but we felt it was important to get things sorted out so that passengers and taxpayers were properly looked after.
Connex strongly disagrees. It insists the South East Railway needs more money, and many other train companies have had similar problems.
Certainly they're running out of money, there's no doubt about that. Several train operating companies have been back for more cash to the SRA, and I'm sure some others will be.
The difference with Connex, says the Rail Authority, is you can't see where the extra cash went. Connex is currently bidding for other franchises in Northern England and Wales. But after this embarrassment, the chances of winning look slim. Simon Montague, BBC News.
Well, let's talk to our business editor, Jeff Randall. Jeff, train passengers have got to be wondering tonight, what about the other rail companies? Are any of them going to be in line for the red card?
That's a very good question, Fiona. Good evening. I put that very question to Richard Bowker from the SRA tonight, just before we came on air. And he promised me that though he has given Connex the red card, no other operator even has a yellow card. Well, maybe, but I can tell you his action has absolutely terrified all the other operators. They knew that he had a big bat in his office masked marked naughty boys, but they never actually thought he would use it. Well, today he took that big bat out and he whacked Connex over the head with it, and the rest of them who think they may have poor performance, poor punctuality, poor finance are pretty worried.
Jeff, if Connex is so bad, how do they get the licence in the first place and then keep it for 7 years?
Well, that's another good question, isn't it? It's the one everybody here at Victoria Station is asking tonight. All those commuters who have suffered the indignities of Connex all over the years, they're saying this company couldn't run a bath, much less a train set. However, it has to be said, in fairness to the rail authorities, Connex is part of a very big international conglomerate, part of Vivendi. It has a very good corporate CV. It runs transport assets, transport interests all over Europe, Spain and Germany. On the surface, it looks a pretty good bet. In reality, it completely failed to deliver what the commuters need.
Jeff Ranoff, thanks very much. A man in custody in Saudi Arabia is the country's most senior al-Qaeda leader, according to US security officials. Ali al-Ghamdi is suspected of masterminding last month's suicide bombings in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, which killed 34 people. Since the bombings, the Saudi authorities have been making much stronger efforts to crack down on suspected militants.
Mecca by night. These pictures, just released, show Saudi police storming a suspected militant hideout 2 weeks ago. The Saudis believe they uncovered a terrorist plot by Islamic extremists inside Islam's holiest city. Shockingly, these pictures from state television show copies of the Holy Quran, apparently rigged with explosive timers. And now there's a new development. Ali al-Ghamdi, a top al-Qaeda suspect, has been taken into custody. He's believed to have fought with al-Qaeda in Tora Bora in Afghanistan. He's also being blamed for masterminding this, last month's devastating bomb attacks on Westerners in Riyadh. Al-Ghamdi is now being intensively questioned by Saudi intelligence.
I think it's a very major blow to the Al-Qaeda organization in Saudi Arabia. We have to understand this man moved from Tora Bora to Saudi Arabia with one mission to establish a cell in Saudi Arabia. And he was the one who was responsible for the contact, the link between the Al-Qaeda leadership and the operators inside Saudi Arabia.
The Riyadh bombing seemed to have been a turning point for the Saudi authorities. But lately, they've now started to take the problem of al-Qaeda seriously. They've sacked extremist preachers, they've closed down suspect charities, and they've arrested at least 50 al-Qaeda suspects. But somewhere in this secretive, highly traditional society, some of al-Qaeda's most dangerous men are still at large. Hidden amongst the rest of the population, they're believed to be still plotting against Western targets. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Still to come tonight, the massacre of 1,000 people in this Italian village kept secret for 50 years. And the tournament favourite powers his way into Wimbledon's second week. There are signs of progress tonight in the search for peace in the Middle East. The Palestinian militant group Hamas has given the clearest signal yet that it's preparing to suspend attacks against Israeli targets. Meanwhile, Israel and the Palestinian Authority have reached an agreement that would see Israeli troops withdraw from parts of the northern Gaza Strip and the West Bank town of Bethlehem. Orla Guerin is in Jerusalem. Orla, first of all, what more can you tell us about this withdrawal of troops?
Well, it's supposed to be in effect possibly as soon as Monday. Sources on both sides confirming the broad outline of the deal, Fiona, and it's this, that the troops will pull back from sections of Gaza and also from the West Bank town of Bethlehem. In addition to this, there will be a relaxation of other very stringent Israeli restrictions, and the aim basically is to make Gaza feel less like an open-air prison for the Palestinians, give them a chance to move around again in their own areas. Now, in sync with all of this, Palestinian police are supposed to go back in, retake control of these streets, and American monitors are supposed to be watching over the whole process. So things are lining up after weeks of very serious and very severe American pressure. And the other key development now is this indication from Hamas, which has killed more Israelis than any other militant group, that it has taken a decision to stop attacks, not telling us when that will happen, not saying what the conditions will be, and certainly there will be strings attached. But it seems that Hamas wants to make a joint declaration with other militant groups, and probably that will come on Sunday during the visit here of the US National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice.
OK, all again, thanks very much. The Ulster Unionist Party has suspended 3 MPs who are opposing their leader, David Trimble's support for the Good Friday Peace Agreement. David Bernstein, Martin Smith and Geoffrey Donaldson had said earlier this week they would no longer follow the party line in parliamentary debates. It's the latest move in a long-running battle with the UUP over sharing power with Sinn Féin. Italian MPs are demanding to know why hundreds of secret files detailing Nazi atrocities during the Second World War were deliberately hidden away for more than 50 years. One of the massacres that's now been uncovered took place in the village of Marzabotto, south of Bologna, where nearly 1,000 men, women and children were massacred by the German SS and their Italian supporters in 1944. From there, Brian Barron reports.
The soft light of early summer in the unspoiled Apennines. 60 years ago, Hitler's elite SS troops came for 6 days of murder on official orders. They shot the village priest on the altar, slaughtered his parishioners, destroyed the church. Marzabotto was the single worst Nazi atrocity in occupied Western Europe, as the Germans killed civilians in retaliation for resistance attacks. A few children survived. Now, as old men, they showed me the ruins. Ardilio Pacelli says the Germans raised their machine guns, killing everyone, including all 10 in his family. Franco Lazzarini says most war criminals have never been tried, let alone convicted. Eventually, the German army surrendered to the Allies. They departed Italy, reviled for the barbarity of their final occupation. But in the Military Justice Tribunal in Rome, nearly 700 files about Marzabotto and other massacres were deliberately forgotten for 40 years. This is Antonio Intellisano, the military prosecutor tasked by Parliament with investigating why the files remained hidden until the 1990s.
I fascicoli erano stati volutamente occultati.
He told us a high-level decision was taken in the early 50s to avoid more war crimes trials of Germans to protect international relations as the NATO alliance was formed. As the war ended, Italian fascists guilty of atrocities were shot. Few SS men were punished for Marzabotto, though 400 took part. Who might still be liable for justice?
Not only the SS, but also German army officers or soldiers were still alive.
Does it depend on what's in the files?
Maybe in those files. We don't know exactly what's the content of those files.
Marzabotto has been rebuilt 5 miles from the ruins, a village full of bitterness. The new Commission of Inquiry is a belated move to tidy up the loose ends of history. For decades, European integration, bringing old enemies together, took precedence over raking through the ashes of atrocities like this. And the truth is, time has just about run out for justice. Brian Barron, BBC News, Marzabotto.
The footballing world has been paying tribute to Marc-Vivien Foé. The Manchester City player collapsed and died last night while playing for the Cameroon national team. Hundreds of fans paid their respects to the player in Manchester today.
Perhaps it takes the death of an icon to bring home the full impact of a life unexpectedly and prematurely lost. The outpourings of emotions in Manchester today, where Marc-Vivien Foé had spent last season on loan with Premier League City, were vivid illustration as hundreds queued to sign a book of condolence. The sense of deep loss was palpable.
We are a family, not just in the club, outside the club. You see the supporters out here are part of that family, and we've lost a very important member of that family. And, you know, we've got to be allowed to grieve now.
Foé, aged only 28 and with 3 young children, had seemed his normal combative self during last night's match in Lyon. But then, with 72 minutes gone, he inexplicably collapsed in the centre circle. Despite receiving prompt medical attention, he was pronounced dead from a suspected heart attack 45 minutes later. Inevitably, there was grief in football too. The French national team, many of whom knew him personally, were told of his death just before playing against Turkey in Paris. Foé first came to English football when, along with Paolo Di Canio, he signed for West Ham. Their then manager was hoping to re-sign him for Portsmouth.
He was as fit as a fiddle, he was strong as an ox, and he was a lovely boy, lovely fella, you know, always had a smile on his face. He was such a simple boy, you know, easy-going boy. never a problem to deal with. Loved his training, loved his football. I wouldn't think he'd ever made an enemy anywhere.
It's at City, though, that he'll be most fondly remembered, and not just for poignantly scoring their last ever goal at Main Road. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
Now, with news of today's tennis action, Mary Rhodes is at a rather soggy Wimbledon. Mary.
Yes, thanks very much, Fiona. It has thankfully eased off a little bit now, but we did have a few rain interruptions today, but then we had managed to get through nearly a whole week without having to dive for cover. Well, it didn't stop Andy Roddick's progression. The fifth seed, who of course put out Greg Rosetsky 2 days ago, is through to the last 16 for the first time. And the fifth seed enjoyed another straight sets victory, this time over Tommy Robredo, beating him 7-6, 6-4, 6-4. Bad news for everyone else through to the last 16 at Wimbledon is that Andy Roddick says he's now starting to believe in himself. Anyone who's watched him over the past few months will know there's something worth believing in. The Queen's Club champion was given a healthy workout in the opening set by Tommy Robredo, but it was the fifth seed who took the tiebreak. Robredo was one of 3 Spaniards to reach the third round, the most to progress that far at Wimbledon. The traditional clay court country showed it can produce players with a delicate touch.
That's lovely tennis.
A single break of serve for the American in the second and third sets were enough to put Roddick through to the second week for the first time.
You know, the biggest thing, I think, the first one's always the toughest to get, and I think the biggest fear is the fear of the unknown. If you haven't done it before, you don't know yet. But, I'm starting to believe in myself, and, I'm definitely here to try to win this tournament.
Let's hope that Roddick's newfound self-confidence isn't dented too easily. Now, if you can stretch your mind all the way back to Monday, you'll probably remember the name Ivo Karlovic, the 6'10" Croatian, who of course put out the #1 seed Leighton Hewitt in the first round, went out in 4 sets to Max Mirny, who at 6'5" is no small fry himself. Now, in the women's singles, Venus Williams was showing some of her former championship-winning form. The 4th seed put on a powerful display to ease past the Russian Nadia Petrova with a 6-1, 6-2 victory. She'll now meet another Russian, Vera Zvonareva, in the last 16 on Monday. And Andre Agassi starts proceedings on centre court tomorrow. He's up against Younes Alanui. Fiona.
And what about Tim Henman? He's back on court too.
He certainly is on centre court, third on, so I predict a bit of rush of Hen mania around about tea time tomorrow. And he's got another qualifier. A lot of people saying that Henman's had one of the easiest first weeks that he's had at Wimbledon in a long time. And it's Robin Söderling of Sweden that he faces tomorrow in centre court. But, of course, if he's to get to his 5th semi-final in 6 years here at Wimbledon, well, he could face Andre Agassi in the semi-finals. And that is going to be a tougher prospect than any of his matches so far here this week. So, Monday could be a tough test for him. Fiona.
Okay. No, thanks very much. In 1970, 1,000 hippies paid £1 to a Somerset farmer and created Glastonbury, one of the world's biggest and most successful festivals. 25 years on, and 150,000 revellers have paid £100 to camp out on Worthy Farm for 3 days of music, politics and, of course, mud. John Kay has been soaking up the atmosphere.
Hey, my sister Sandy.
David Gray on the Pyramid stage tonight as the festival reaches full capacity. And even when it's raining, the crowds keep smiling.
It is part of Glastonbury. It's like, wow, mud, yes.
Sacred spirit of the East, we welcome you to our circle.
Away from the main stage, Glastonbury's old guard say their traditions are being crowded out. Ian Collins spends every year sleeping in his teepee. He says the event has become too commercial.
What people have as like next to them, is different now compared to what it was, 25 years ago. There was no mobile phones.
But in 2003, you can even have your mobile recharged by corporate sponsors, and you can buy pretty much anything. The organisers deny that they've sold out. These festival goers aren't listening to a band, but to political debate. This year, the politics tent has quadrupled in size.
And don't tell me that it's not that compassionate radical edge that makes this festival the only festival in the world that can sell out in less than 24 hours without even announcing the acts that are on stage.
Emily Evis is the farmer's daughter who's gradually taking over the running of the festival. She claims the anti-war protests have inspired the event to get serious.
Now's the time where
young people feel really, really like they want to change things and they can change things. And I think that they feel that they can change things here.
The organisers claim there's one other radical change this year. So far, fewer arrests and less trouble than anyone can remember. The event goes on until Sunday night. John Kay, BBC News, at the Glastonbury Festival.
I'll be back a little later with an update on the day's headlines. But now let's join our news teams across the UK. Bye for now.